So just like that, the snap of a finger, it's hard to even grasp it at times, the reality of the fact that preseason game number 1 is already in the books. And as I always say, before you know it, you'll be blinking your eyes and we'll be talking about one of the great weekends of downtown Indianapolis, Thanksgiving weekend or whatever it may be, because it goes like that. The NBA schedule is out. We know that now. We have officially, I think, transitioned kind of out of summer into autumn. I know realistically we still have probably another 2 months of warm weather, but kids are back. You get what I'm saying. But last night, I thought personally there was a moment that defined that game and the current circumstance for the Colts. And it's not bad. It's not good. It is fitting that the Colts would last night get a tie in that game. It was fitting that game would end in a tie, not just because it's the preseason and nobody is wanting overtime football in the preseason. Nobody. Maybe a guy that's on the fringe of making the roster that didn't get enough reps and wants more opportunity and needs another quarter to play. Maybe
a degenerate who is gambling on preseason football.
Can you gamble on preseason football?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
You piped in like you might know such a degenerate.
I was working at the other job last night, so I wasn't really able to follow along closely to the game. And it was kind of a hectic night at the other job. We had a bunch of people that either A, didn't show up, B, left early, or C, decided they were sick. And so I was doing multiple things. And my shift ends. My group chat, I'm in 2 different group chats that are primarily active. One of them had 100 messages in a 2-hour span.
And it was all about the game?
Yes.
Okay.
And gambling.
Well, so you're friends with degenerates?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Not unlike, as we've mentioned before, when I worked at WRTV and back before the internet and everything else, and at 1:30 in the morning, you'd be in there getting ready for the next day, and the phone would ring. Sports. Yeah, do you know who won the Fresno State Hawaii game? Yeah, let me pull up the AP wire here. 72-67 looks like Fresno State won. That game go off as a 5.5 or 4.5 point spread. I don't know, man. There's a number you can call. 809 with it. But overtime in preseason football is no longer a thing because the NFL said enough. Preseason football in itself creates a pendulum of emotion to this extent. Not because you're on the edge of your seat about what's going to happen. Not because you're screaming at the television that was not a touchdown or that was a touchdown or that was not a fumble or that was a fumble. Both of those things coming into play last night. But there is a cross of emotion because part of it is you're super excited to see football again, and then part of it is you're like, you have to remind yourself, but it's preseason, and I had forgotten just how by the third quarter I'm looking at a bunch of players that probably are not going to make the roster. Although a couple of them, and we'll get to that, I think resoundingly jumped right into the party and just went, hello, I'm here, and you kind of had to notice it. But a tie football game or a tie sporting event in general, as the old saying is like kissing your sister, which I think is super weird because I don't see any positive that comes from that. But, you know.
Exactly. That's the point.
Well, but kissing your sister, the phrase is supposed to be that, like, I guess at least you're getting a kiss. That's horrific to me. But you're not losing the game, but you're not winning either. I think to an extent that perfectly personifies what deep down, deep down, like in the subconscious of the Colts brass, deeper than Atlantis, deeper than the seafloor traveled by the mantis, very deep within the subconscious. There probably had to be for the Colts. I'm not going to say a hope. but a thought of, okay, we will get better clarity on what the situation is with Anthony Richardson so long as what we expect to happen happens. And I thought last night, Richardson, yes, he had his first throw was awful. I know a lot of people on the interception are saying it was not his fault because the ball did make contact with hand, but it was overthrown, and that puts everything off kilter and facilitated for that pass to not be completed, in my opinion. I'm not saying it's entirely his fault, but it was kind of like a tie in a preseason game. It was like you can go either way with it. But I thought Richardson had moments where he showed why he was the guy that they had so much belief in his promise. And I'm not certain deep down in their subconscious, not because of anything personal regarding Anthony Richardson, but deep down, I couldn't help but wonder if there wasn't part of the Colts that were saying to themselves, this is kind of like when you run into your ex that you haven't seen in 5 years, and there's a little part of you that kind of hopes that they've gained more weight than you have. There's a little part of you that kind of hopes that they've aged more than you have. And then you run into them, and it's like, oh, gosh, they really look good. And I think to an extent, for the Colts last night, there had to be a feeling, or at the very least for fans and whatever else, of Anthony Richardson of like, wait a minute, like, I don't know. Do we need to give this even more time? Do we need to put it back in the microwave and hit defrost for another 2 minutes? Because there was one time we did a taste of it, and we're like, that is really good. It's a little cold, but that's really good. And then there's other times you take, that probably needs to be thrown out. And that dichotomy continues. That confusion continues. And that was only further cemented. That confusion, that, gosh, we still don't know because this could go either way. I think that was cemented by this. Somebody pointed this out to me this morning, and I could not agree more. I recall talking to Rick Venturi when Trevor Lawrence was coming out of Clemson. Now, open disclaimer, I think most people know I'm a Clemson fan. I had season tickets when Trevor Lawrence was playing there.
Homer!
Went to every game. What's that?
Homer!
That's right. And I called Rick Venturi and said, hey, what do you think of Trevor Lawrence? And Rick Venturi said, I haven't put him through the car wash yet, which is the term he uses for, like, I haven't done the full breakdown yet. But he said, but so far, what I see is indeed Peyton Manning level. However, he told me, he said, the one thing about any player coming out of college, in particular a quarterback, is you have to look at where they've been. And he said, for a Trevor Lawrence, one of the things that's going to be a challenge is the fact that, and he said, the college game now is different than the pro game to an extent where you pretty much knew with the Peyton Manning. You pretty much knew with even a Drew Brees. You pretty much knew with going further back, a Dan Marino or a John Elway. The defensive looks, the size, the speed, but more so the formations being played and presented at the college game to the NFL game were a smaller transition of style than today. But the bigger thing and there's a point to this as it relates to last night's game, and it relates to a dilemma the Colts may be in. If you look at a Trevor Lawrence, you look at a Joe Burrow, and with Joe Burrow, it was seamless. Didn't seem to impact him as much. But there are quarterbacks, Alabama had, if you look at quarterbacks that have come out of Alabama that were 28-2 as a starter at Alabama, 15-0 as a starter at Alabama, Jay Barker, A.J. McCarron, Mac Jones to an extent, even though he's had some success. Those guys are throwing to receivers that are elite Sunday-ready receivers. Trevor Lawrence at Clemson was throwing to receivers that were elite Sunday-ready receivers. And so when they're dropping back, they're throwing to guys that are a step and a half ahead of everybody else on the field. So timing and anticipation isn't as prioritized if you're a quarterback at a Clemson or at an Alabama as it is if you're coming out of Alcorn State or Minnesota. Riley Leonard last night, to me, showed something, or rather, didn't show something. Quarterbacks in the NFL, somebody sent me this morning, and I thought they are literally reading my mind because it was the first thing I thought when I watched last night. Quarterbacks in the NFL, when they're learning the NFL, and for Peyton Manning, who threw more interceptions than any rookie in the history of the league, it took him a minute to learn this. Ironically enough, because of everything that I just mentioned about what he had coming out of college, that transition. But Manning was throwing to where guys were. And I've told the story 1,000 times where he came to the sideline after a play and Tom Moore said, "You missed your guy." And Manning said, "He wasn't open." And Tom Moore said, "He was NFL open." He might not have been Tennessee open. He was NFL open. And Manning made that flip and that adjust and then realized that, and watch Manning, watch Breeze, watch Andrew Luck, watch Joe Burrow. They don't throw to where the guy is open. They throw to where the guy needs to be open when the ball arrives. And Riley Leonard last night was throwing to the receiver. He was not throwing to where the receiver needs to be. Or he was waiting and checking away from a receiver. Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, Joe Burrow, quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is a classic example of this. When they're going through their reads and they're going through their checks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're like the sprinkler, surveying the field. They're not looking at, okay, Eddie's open, I got to throw him right now. They're looking at who is going to be open 2 steps from right now. Who can I anticipate is going to be open? And that's where I'm going to put the football because I can anticipate, I can read already. I can see the defense. I can see the coverage. I can see who is coming over to help. I can see where things are shifting. And I know in a second and a half of process. And last night I thought Riley Leonard lacked that intangible. It's just a preseason game, I realize, but he's also throwing against guys that probably are playing for a practice squad spot. And yet, he was throwing to where they were as opposed to where they need to be. He was not anticipatory. He did not look like a guy that, and I know that he had a game last year where he was serviceable, if not slightly above that. But if you are in a situation where Daniel Jones goes down and you need that donut tire, you need that donut tire to come in and give you 2 to 3 games. Because what do I say about donut tires? They'll get you to the next exit or to the next AutoZone. But if you expect it to finish your drive to Florida for you, you're in a world of hurt. And the same is said for backup quarterback. And I think deep down, the easiest and cleanest thing for the Colts is for Riley Leonard to emerge and for them to say, okay, because there's nothing against Anthony Richardson as a person, but how and where he was acquired and everything that went into him, so long as he is on your roster and so long as he is in your stable, there is going to be speculation about why he's not playing or what they should do with him or whatever else. And so the easier thing, if I may use that term, is to probably move on from it. Now, I thought last night he did, and this is the good news of this, he did show enough that if he's not in the Colts plan, then there may in fact be somebody that looked at him and said, you know what, this guy does have, when he runs the football, he can be a difference-making guy. Are there packages you can run for him? Maybe not in Indianapolis because they committed to Daniel Jones. That is their guy. And as Tom Moore said, when Peyton Manning goes down, if he goes down, we're blanked and we don't practice blank. And with the Colts, so much is built around who Daniel Jones is and what he does that, in fact, if he goes down, they're probably long-term blanked. But I thought Richardson last night, there was a very telling moment. And the very telling moment where a picture paints 1,000 words. Bread had that song, If. And the first line of the song, if the picture paints 1,000 words. That was going through my mind. Thank you. As I was watching right there, when Richardson fumbled and they scan over and they show Shane Steichen. A quarterback fumbled in a preseason game. A meaningless preseason game. Is a coach really that emotionally invested in a preseason game, unless he's in Eddie's group chat, that he is going to sit there with his pointer finger and his thumb massaging his sinuses as he stares at the ground? That to me looked like a coach that was saying, this is it. That's the problem. There is so much there, but just when you think the corner's been turned and the ankle slips and the ball lands awkwardly and there's a fumble. Or you have three, and the thing about Richardson that has always been enigmatic, Anthony Richardson is Adam Dunn. He'll hit you a home run every once in a while where you go, holy cow. And then he'll turn around on the other side and swing and a miss hitting for the home run, and he's laying on one knee. He feels a little bit like Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson is a phenomenal shooter coming off a curl from 35 feet. But you get him in a situation where all of a sudden he's got to close on the block against Wembanyama, forget about it. Can't hit the layup, but he'll hit the 35-footer that takes your breath away all day long. And I think for Richardson, so much of the fundamental of quarterback is, in fact, playing from the intermediary and then going outward, and instead he's outward trying to then develop the intermediary, and it has yet to have taken place. And at this point, if you look at Shane Steichen and you see him sitting there staring at the floor, Shane Steichen, if you could put truth serum in that moment he was saying to himself, see, this is it. Every time I get optimistic and then we turn the ball over. That's what he's thinking in the moment. And if he was forecasting, what he was saying was, this is going to be tough, though, because at the end of this game, by the time it's all said and done, he's going to find a rhythm and actually look pretty serviceable, and Riley Leonard is going to look like a guy that can't play on Sundays. And that's what happened. Now, all of that discussion, and we'll break down a lot of it over the course of today, will be overshadowed by other aspects of the game. I thought Caden Curry was outstanding. Again, you take it with a grain of salt because of who he's going up against, but at the same time, you could put Warren Sapp in that game in his prime, and you can only do, regardless of who's there, you can't do much better than a sack, consistent penetration into the backfield, disruption, nonstop motor. I thought Caden Curry looked great. And there is a part of me that thinks to myself, this guy was a high-volume, high-impactful player at Ohio State. Not Ohio University, not Bowling Green State, not Kent State, Ohio State. Probably the richest and, for the last 10 years, best program in college football. And he went in there and has been a great player at Ohio State for the totality of his career. Well, he's a little undersized. He didn't have enough twitch on his hips. Whatever, he was productive at Ohio State. And I'm not saying that means that he is the next coming of Mark Gastineau, but he looked pretty good last night. You got to feel good about that. I think you are optimistic about a couple of different areas and pessimistic about a couple as well, which we'll get to over the course of today on the show. And we will talk a little Colts, too, in the former variety. Mike Vanderjagt going to join us at 11 o'clock. I'm curious about this because he's the head coach now and general manager, we mentioned it yesterday, of the Indianapolis Capitals, which is the new semi-pro team that will be playing in Grand Park in Westfield. And this is a guy that his departure from Indianapolis was not exactly a rosy send-off. And I think people forget some of the great moments that he had and think only about the Peyton Manning comments and then the missed kick against Pittsburgh. And he was a very sure of himself guy. There's no question about that. So I do wonder if this isn't like kind of this rekindling effort, if you will, to get back to and have relationship with the people of Indianapolis. Not like the Capitals are going to be some major headline-stealing organization, but just the coming back to work in football in this city. Is this a redemption thing? Or is it just a guy that's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to lie to you. I totally missed the Chicago's Pizza Lunch Buffet. Okay. I mean, that's totally understandable, obviously. Pacers schedule's out. Eddie, what jumped out at you about the Pacers schedule?
They got nearly the max number of Sega Babas that you could possibly have.
That's
Jake.
The second game of back-to-backs.
Yes, the second game of back-to-back. They have 15 back-to-backs this season. The max that you can have is 16. They have more homestands of 4+ games than they do road trips of 4+ games. 11 games on primetime television. When we did the exercise, what was that, a week or so ago? We said it would probably be around 8. That was our guess. They ended up getting 11, 5 of them on Peacock and NBC Sports Network, 4 of them on Amazon Prime, which, by the way, just a reminder, Tyrese Halliburton is an analyst for Prime, so I'm a little shocked the number's not just a little higher. I thought if they were to have, majority of their games on a primetime network, it would be Amazon Prime just because of that tie.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah, the pun was intended there. You have one game on NBC and then one game on ESPN. But, I mean, outside of that, nothing whole lot to really, note. NBA Cup games were already announced. We knew that. 4 homestands of at least 4 games.
Do you think, Eddie, and it's kind of hard to know this at the time in terms of matchup, but in terms of attrition or in terms of demand, physical demand of the schedule, do you feel that their schedule is more difficult at the beginning of the year or the end of the year?
End of the year, if everyone's healthy and depending on the playoff seeding.
The reason, okay, but again, demanding wise, regardless of the seeding,
that's a great question.
In other words,
if you look at their 15 back-to-backs, most of them are within the first 3 months of the year.
See, and I would rather get that out of the way while you are gelling anyway.
Well, the caveat that I give to you on that is this. As of right now, Jake, we don't know what the status of Tyrese Halliburton will be on the second night of the back-to-back.
Yeah, that's very fair.
So would you rather have those later in the year where he has the ability to potentially even play some of those, or on the front portion of the schedule where you may not have him out there?
My thought is, if you are going to have non-normal circumstance.
By the way, your best friend just texted me. All caps, Sega Baba, glad the trend is making its way.
Byron doesn't have your number.
Oh, Derek Schultz.
Now, technically, I guess my best friend would be Shannon. Now, she does text you from time to time, right?
She does, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, she does.
Okay. Fair enough. Sega Baba, you and Derek are the only two people that say it, and you say it just to
no,
irritate
it's sweeping the nation, Jake.
But the reality is this. If you have circumstances that are not necessarily foreseen, like your star player coming back from injury, and you are looking at the acclimation period of a center, a key piece that needs to mesh and mold. I think you're better off going through the most challenging gauntlet right out of the box and forcing yourself and taking your lumps and then saying, okay, we've gotten that all out of the way now. Now that the weather's turning and we're into like March and April, we feel really good about not necessarily maybe even how we handled it, but where we've been and the challenges we had. And now it's like, okay. It's kind of like if your week is, do you have a week that's front loaded where you're like, man, I got a ton to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then by Wednesday night, you're like, man, I feel like I'm home free now. That's kind of how their schedule looks to me.
Yeah, for the first 6 on the road, you've got New Orleans, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Miami. Your first home game is Friday, October 23rd, which is the second game of the season against Cooper Flagg, your guy, and Dusty May. How about that?
Cooper Flagg's really good.
Yep, that's on the Friday, October 23rd. And then the second home game is the only game that they have right now on ESPN. That's, LeBron James and the revamped Philadelphia 76ers coming to town on August the 28th, which is a Wednesday night.
When we come back, there were 2 areas that I kept scouring for the Colts, and yet I didn't see what I was looking for. I'll explain, and Mike Vanderjagt joins in 35.
Carey and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So the name of the song is If, right? And if a picture paints 1,000 words, that moment last night, I can't be the only one that noticed it. Richardson fumbles and they pan over, and Shane Steichen is sitting there, and not just like a quick, I mean, he's got his head down and the bridge of his nose is, and he's just staring at the ground.
Well, didn't you photograph it?
I did.
It's on at Jake Query on Twitter.
And that's X, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry, X.
I'm team Twitter also. And maybe he was actually thinking to himself, if. Not the song. He wasn't thinking if as in, I love that song. He was thinking if. If there's a receiver on this team that can deem it unnecessary for us to go out and land a big free agent receiver signing, then tonight's the night I'm going to find out who that is. And yet, Will Mallory is probably that guy, and he's a tight end. But Will Mallory has become the tight end Drew Haddad, if you will. He's become Mr. August. And I think he actually, the time may now be perfect for them to get the reward of the patience they've shown with Will Mallory, because he shows the tendency to be able to be kind of a slot type receiver. I know that sounds weird because he's a bigger body, clearly, and he is a tight end. But if you need times where you got to spell Tyler Warren and how important he's going to be to that offense, or if you simply need to go even like in a two tight end set where you got two guys that can make catches across the middle and turn it into a little extra yardage, Mallory to this point has shown that. Outside of that, at the receiver position, I mean, literally, Eddie, it's like last night you mentioned. At your second job, three guys called in, one got a speeding ticket on the way and his car was impounded, the manager called in sick, and somebody else went to the wrong location, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so, if there was somebody that works where you work that wanted the opportunity for the first time, and they've always been curious about like working or helping out in a different department, last night was the night. And the same is kind of true for the Colts in the receiver position. If you are a receiver for the Colts, and I know this was not, one game does not a preseason make, but if you're a receiver and you want to stand out, they're begging it. They're begging it. Will someone please stand up? Now, I think the one guy that, and I heard Bill Brooks mention this after the game, I heard Charles Arbuckle in particular say it with Matt on the radio, and I think he's probably right, and Charles Arbuckle would certainly know. He's like, look, Nick Westbrook-Akine looks like a guy that is not afraid to jump up and try to seize that moment, or just, you know what, I'll wait for all the, you can take all these young guys all you want and give them additional. I'm just going to go out there, and when my number's called, I'm going to make a play for you. And I think so far, unless somebody else really jumps out and jumps at you, I think he looks like he is going to be one that makes the roster. Now, Raylan Sharp looked okay, but that's not a position where you need a lot of depth, and you kind of have that area, or in terms of stylistically or schematically, and Josh Downs kind of has that position locked down.
Let me ask you this, Jake.
Yes, sir.
When you look back on that game from last night, and you look at how Richardson had some moments, okay, with primarily the backups, especially at receiver, then you look at what Riley Leonard did or did not do with the third stringers, especially with those receivers.
Is it fair to assess them?
Is it fair to assess this? Was the biggest winners of last night's game Josh Downs, Tyler Warren, and Alec Pierce?
Yes.
Specifically Downs, considering he's going into a contract year?
Well, the biggest, okay, very good point there. The biggest winner also, even though this is a long ago decided bout, was Daniel Jones as well, because they may. I thought Richardson looked okay, but if Riley Leonard is a guy that they still have thought could be like a backup for them, at some point, one of the things that really hurts the Colts, Eddie, to your point, kind of parlays off that point. The Daniel Jones injury, it is remarkable where he's come back. It's remarkable that this guy tore his Achilles like 8 months ago, 9 months ago, and is going through full practices, looking at other defenses, all of that. It's remarkable. But you still have to be careful with the amount that you are using that repaired Achilles. And for that reason, it may actually hurt the Colts and we'll see how much, if any, rep he gets here in the preseason in terms of games. But realistically, if there is a receiver on the roster that is one that can give them depth or that they truly feel can be an everyday Sunday guy, then you want to make sure in the full evaluation of that player that and furthermore, if there is nobody who's jumped out at that just yet, you need to put them in the best position in the most realistic situation to totally be able to assess who and what they are. Is it possible we can sit here and say that none of these receivers really jumped out, but if it is somebody that is, like a slot, Raylan Sharp is kind of a slot receiver. Well, he's trying to catch passes from Anthony Richardson, who, if you are a behind the defense long ball guy, then now you got something there, right? Because that's what Richardson can do when he's out there. But you're not getting the full complement of possibility or scenario for a wide receiver to show off what they can do, because so far you've been limited in the guys that are throwing them the football in the preseason games. And you have to also assess that to be fair, we're asking this guy to go out and make catches, but he's not getting a lot of great balls thrown his way. Now, Richardson did look better, don't get me wrong. But Richardson, I think the intrigue of what he showed was so much of with his legs. And that's where it hurts you to not have Daniel Jones out there too sporadically or even in just a couple of series. Maybe not last night, obviously. And maybe we will see him at some point during the preseason, but I think you need to get a true feel for not just Daniel Jones, but everybody else. Now, the other positions that Shane Steichen was saying to himself, if somebody would step up, can they please do it now? Would be linebacker. I thought personally, and I'm not saying they got bad linebacker. I thought Jalen Carlisle looked okay, but or is going to be okay, I guess is a better way of saying it. But they looked defensively like that, and I don't know the proper NFL term, but that middle area of the field, I thought they looked very soft. They got some pressure on the quarterback, and we know that their defensive backfield is going to be strong from a starting standpoint. How much depth is there? Again, Hunter Wohler goes into the tent, right? So, and I think there's a lot of expectation and hope about him. Halsey, started okay. I mean, kind of hard to assess. But I thought some of their corners that did have experience under their belt from a year ago kind of looked exposed. And this is not against a high rhythm, in rhythm, frontline starting offense. You know what I mean?
Well, I think last night, Jake, when you look at that second unit for the New England Patriots and you look at the receivers that they had out there, it's like, holy cow, these are actual like NFL receivers. So it gave you a little bit of a comparison, like, of what your depth looks like. And, Mekhi Blackman is either burnt toast or he's grabbing. Like, he's either committing a pass interference or holding, or he's getting cooked. And then not Anthony Edwards. I don't know why I said Anthony Edwards, but what's his name, Jake? I'm spacing.
You're talking about at the receiver position?
No, the DB Edwards first name.
Oh, Jonathan Edwards.
Jonathan,
yeah.
thank you. Jonathan Edwards had a couple rough, snaps last night in coverage, but you look at what New England had out there in terms of the receivers. They had Kyle Williams, a guy who had different moments last year where it's like, okay, this is a guy that, New England found late in the draft, and maybe it's somebody that's a something. He had 3 touchdowns last year. Matt Collins is a guy who had a lot of moments last year for the Patriots. So it's not like they were going up against, bad receivers by any means. But I think it puts a light a little bit. Like if Mooney Ward is hurt for a substantial amount of time with that back injury and Sauce Gardner, has to miss time at all, you're a little scared.
Chris, by the way, with this message, I agree, Chris. It's hard for the wide receiver to stand out with those 2 quarterbacks. That's fair. Again, Richardson did have a little bit more. Once he got into groove, he looked a little more comfortable. But yes, Chris, I don't disagree, as I said. I mean, that's the one thing that hurts him from an injury standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, you can also make the case, Jake, that the wide receivers aren't making it easy on the quarterbacks. Like if they're not separating and having any windows for the quarterbacks to deliver the football.
But again, Eddie, I don't disagree with that. But I think there is an element of the reality is this. This is a perfect drill. It's a perfect exercise for a Riley Leonard, for example, to learn how finite it is, the open receiver in the NFL. There is no collapse time, basically. And so that forces a quarterback to have to throw to anticipation as opposed to result before their eyes. And that's a good exercise to go through, but Riley Leonard last night looked like a quarterback that is still in that process of processing. And at this point, if he is going to be their backup quarterback, you need a guy that has already gone through that process and figured that out. You make a great point, but it looks to me like a guy that is behind the 8 ball at this point of learning that.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to say that, like, hey, well, the quarterbacks didn't make it easy for the receivers when we've been lamenting for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, month that they need to add another guy in the room. So, like, if we're sitting here like, hey, the Colts need to add another player. They need to go get Keenan Allen. They need to go look into Stephon Diggs. And we want to sit here and we want to say that, hey, look, well, the receivers, it's hard for them when they've got Riley Leonard and Anthony Richardson throwing the football. But, like, you have to look at the other side. If they're not getting open, life is going to be hard for those 2 quarterbacks. And, yeah, you can say anticipation, Jake, but if there's not even, like, the slightest room of separation between the receiver and the DB, there's no way they're going to try to force that ball into a window that's not there.
There were a couple of other players I think that kind of jumped out. We will get to that. And Mike Vanderjagt going to join us coming up about 15 minutes from now. I think Mike Vanderjagt's going to join us. And again, I'm curious about this. I realize that people want to talk about the game last night, but I do think that when you have a guy, it has like this Ted Lasso feel to it, which, by the way, I've seen episode 2. I don't know if Eddie has or not. We'll get into that as well. Vanderjagt in 15 here. It's Corey and Company on the Fan.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
10 minutes before the hour of 11 o'clock. Jake Query, Eddie Garrison here. Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Again, a reminder, there are some, I mean, it's terrible when you, and it is, I don't know. Obviously, we've had a lot of rain the last couple of days. I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but typically when you see mass flooding, it's after like this horrific downpour that comes and stays for hours upon a day. And it feels to me, and maybe they have in, northeastern Indiana or eastern central Indiana, maybe a better way of saying it. But some of the images that I've seen, video that I've seen of the rising of water and the rushing of water throughout this state, is terrible. And I saw, and I mean, it goes without saying, clearly the priority is the homes and the livelihoods of people. I did see that, I think it was outside of Muncie or maybe Anderson, they were asking for, places where they can move the animals from an animal shelter because the water was coming in and the animals didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, it's heartbreaking, terrible stuff, right? I did see that Carmel, for example, has said like, hey, let us know what we can do. I say this usually when I say what I'm about to say, I say it in flippancy. But I have always felt that one of the things that Indiana needs to do is, with all of in central Indiana, just for example, with vacant grocery stores or former strip malls or whatever else, and I understand that people own those buildings. I get it, commercial buildings. But I've always felt like the state should, if a building has not been released, resold, whatever, and I'm talking about one of these big buildings, a former grocery store, former department store, that kind of thing. After a certain amount of time, the state should come in under eminent domain or whatever and say, okay, here's what we're doing. And I've always said when I become governor, this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be the only thing that I do. It's going to be the one project I do. Within different areas of the state, you take over areas like that, you clean it all the way out, then you hire or you utilize the labor of like the state prisons and things like that, but you get Indiana-based metal and wood companies that are going to get the money off of your project, and you build institutional size like bunk beds and whatever else, and you put them in one of these cleared out buildings and you lock the door. And you put showers in each corner like they have at the state fair and the exhibition halls. You lock the door, and then when there is natural disaster like this and you have people that need to be housed temporarily, you have ready for them facilities in different areas of the state that are ready to go. You have the local people in the local area donate board games and some televisions and whatever else, but you have bunk beds and showers, and you have temporary housing ready to go where people have a displacement emergency shelter. That's my one thing that I'm going to do when I'm governor. Eddie, have you seen the latest Ted Lasso by chance?
I have not. Been kind of busy.
Andrew told me he saw it, said, I like how the new season's going. I've watched both episodes now. It is good. It is, but I still feel like it's a little bit forced and you're kind of waiting for it to become like the true, they're developing some of the characters. I'll simply say that. And it feels a little bit forced to me. That's my one thing. And by the way, I agree also with, not sure who it was that texted it in, but yes, Bryce Betcher looked pretty good last night, I thought. And Lara Overton predicted that yesterday after watching practice, that she thought he was a guy that was potentially going to make some noise in terms of the roster. Linebacker spot, one of them that there is definitely, if you are somebody on the Colts roster that is looking to stick, then being a linebacker might be advantageous for you because there's plenty of opportunity there. There is a new football team. Yesterday we were on the air when this came out, right, Eddie?
It came out just a little bit. Yeah. So yes. Yes.
You had Peyton Manning doing the announcement for the Indianapolis Capitals, which is going to be the Continental Football League. So a semi-pro team that's going to be up in, or I guess pro, but a smaller league team at Drop Like Grand Park in Westfield in May and June, I believe. And we were towards the end of the show, and I'm like, wait a minute, Mike Vanderjagt is the guy that's coming back as the head coach. And I felt like maybe this was like a redemption thing. But I reached out to him while we were on the air, and eventually he got back to us just as we were finishing. And I said, what about 11 o'clock tomorrow? And he said, okay.
Wait. Hold on. Are we allowed to have him back on? Because didn't he make mention of us? Like, didn't he poke fun at us last time we had him on?
Did he?
We were doing the former Colt Friday, right?
Uh-huh.
And he made, what did he make? What was the remark he made about the show?
I think I do recall this. Do you remember the specifics of it? Do you happen to have it?
I'll find it.
Okay.
I'll work my tail off to figure out what he had to say.
Okay. But he is scheduled to join us coming up here in just the other side. Yesterday, we told you about the fact that, and we played for you the clip, and I want to get into it because I thought it was really fun. The clip of Peyton Manning essentially making the announcement that in the Continental Football League, the Indianapolis Capitals, and there's some history there. I even have an old school Indianapolis Capitals t-shirt for that matter. But they have a new head coach and a new general manager. It's actually the same guy. It's fitting that he's on the Swab Men's 2-in-1 hotline because they're getting 2-in-1 with that position. Former Colt, he needs no introduction in this town, but I will do it nonetheless. Mike Vanderjagt joining us on the program. First off, Mike, welcome back to the airwaves in Indianapolis, man. Congratulations on the new gig.
Yeah, it's been a minute, hasn't it? But thank you. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Okay, let's begin with this. The last time that I talked to you, you were the special teams coordinator for the Medina Mustangs, if I'm not mistaken. Now, this is you were helping out high school kids and different coaching clinics and that kind of thing in upstate New York. How does one go from that to now landing this opportunity, and what can you tell us about the Capitals and what you'll be doing?
So Lauren, the managing partner, is a West Virginia alum. She was working for the West Virginia athletic department. We had met at a golf tournament, the Brian Joswiak, every year in Morgantown. And I guess when she got this gig, she was living in Indianapolis, looking around, seeing my jersey and football signed in different spots, and said, he's the first guy I'm going to reach out to and check his interest level. So she did that, and it seemed like a pretty cool idea. And I honestly said, listen, if you want to make a splash in in Indianapolis, you name Mike Vanderjagt your head coach. I said you'll get some head turns for sure. So that's the direction we went.
So Lauren Bozak, by the way, is who you're talking about, who is the team president, managing partner. She is a Mountaineer like yourself. The league itself, Mike, what do you know, or what can you tell us about the Continental Football League? I mean, the Capitals obviously were a semi-pro team some nearly 60 years ago here in Indianapolis. They had a pretty good following. This obviously is kind of a tribute to that heritage, but the Continental Football League itself, what can you tell us?
Well, it's interesting. It's truly the Continental Football League. I guess they're playing NFL rules in the first half and CFL rules in the second half. So since I'm the only person to ever lead the NFL in scoring and the CFL in scoring, I think it's going to fit right up my alley. There's 4 teams in Texas. They're going to be getting 4 teams in the East, and then you kind of just play each other 3 times. You don't travel very far. They're trying to get to 24 teams, and it's a May-June league, so there's only 6 league games at this point. So, I think there's still some things to get ironed out, but kind of that's the gist of it as far as I know so far.
How will you find the players to make the roster? Where will you find them? This is going to be what level or what age or experience level of player?
Well, Lauren's already had some video come into her social media, guys that played in the Arena League. And actually a tight end from Notre Dame. I don't remember his name and how much actually time he got on the field, but it's free agent football. If you want to get paid to play football still and you think you can do it, I got cut all over the CFL. I got cut in the Arena League. It ended up pretty good in the NFL. So, it's just an opportunity for guys who are out of college to, chase their dream at the end of the day.
Mike Vanderjagt is my guest. He is on the Swab Men's 2-in-1 hotline. He is, again, for the Indianapolis Capitals. He will serve as the head coach, the general manager for the team. I wanted to get to this, Mike, for you personally, because I like what you said there. The fact that you knew that it was going to create some. I mean, we saw it. I was on the air, and first off, I loved this. This announcement was made via a message from your former teammate in Peyton Manning. And we don't need to go over it because you and I have already talked about it, the history with you and Peyton Manning and all of that. But I thought it illuminated or illustrated the fact that sometimes there's more to the story than we assume. In other words, there was always this assumption amongst Colts fans that there was this rip between the two of you, and you had said, no, actually, we get along pretty well. And that seems to me to be an illustration of the fact that we don't always know what goes on inside a locker room, correct?
That's putting it mildly. Yeah, Peyton and I had our public spat, but listen, he and I ironed it out immediately the next time we saw each other. We had a quick little interaction in the weight room as we grabbed our scheduled weight room workouts, and we squashed it pretty quick. We obviously played 4 more years after that whole thing went down. We have the same birthday. We wish each other happy birthday every year. I've been on a cruise, and I look down at my phone, and Peyton Manning's wishing me happy birthday. So, the media loves to create controversy when there really isn't any, as we all know, and this is no different. I reached out to Peyton yesterday, and actually it was more about Omaha Productions. I think the coaching staff that I'm putting together is going to be top-notch. The fact that our speed and conditioning coach is the former world's fastest man is a pretty good indication of who I can get and who I'm going to get. So I originally had just reached out to him for that, and then I said, hey, what is your interest level in trying to do something fun with this and squash it? And he took it and ran with it, and I didn't even tell him what to say, and before I knew it, I had a video in my phone going, hey, how's this look? So, yeah, Peyton and I are good, and we will be good for a long time coming.
For you personally, Mike, is there a level of, and I think the whole thing's fun, right? But let's face it, this is giving a chance in guys that might have a Mike Vanderjagt type, you, as you mentioned, you really got your football footing, not necessarily on your first or your second attempt professionally at it, right? You bounce around and then you finally find a place where you stick. And maybe you're going to provide that opportunity for guys. But how much of this is also about opportunity for Mike Vanderjagt in terms of just kind of reacclimating and becoming part of Indianapolis again?
Wow. Complete honesty, if it was Chicago, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, Green Bay, Detroit, the answer would have been no. So obviously there's an Indianapolis aspect to it. Pretty obvious. I actually, a cool thing is it's the Indianapolis Capitals, but you can't spell Capitals without COLTS, which is kind of cool, which I noticed. So yeah, there's an absolute Colts, Capitals, Indianapolis aspect to this opportunity for me. Obviously, I spent 8 years in Indy. I had a great career there. The perception or notion that it maybe had gone south needs to get kind of corrected. So there certainly is absolutely one of those reasons why it happened. And you're absolutely right when it comes to providing an opportunity for guys. Guys could have been hurt in college and never got a chance to even try out in the pros, but they feel like they're healthy and they'd love to give it a shot. So, as I'm a diamond in the rough, there's certainly going to be diamonds in the rough that we hope to find. And the fact that we're going to have coaches that are unbelievably successful and talented, and those guys might want to come play for guys, especially if a guy like Donovan can make you faster, faster is going to be better.
Do you know yet, or can you tell us yet, who Mike Vanderjagt you will also have rounding out your coaching staff?
I do. Lawrence wanting to kind of roll them out individually and give them their own kind of spotlight. So I do have a few in the works, and I have a few lined up, and I have a few signed on. So because Peyton kind of threw it out there, we're going with Donovan first. But, yeah, there's a couple more that people are, I originally, in full disclosure, I wanted an all Colts staff, which would have been really cool. So, but just the guys that I've come across as I've played throughout my career, some names came to the forefront, and I ended up going with those guys. But I will absolutely talk to David Thornton and see if he's got an idea of who some ex-Colts guys would be perfect for this, because I think the more and better relationship the Capitals create for the city through the Colts, the better off we're going to be.
Grand Park, by the way, Drop Light Grand Park up in Westfield is where games will be played for the Indianapolis Capitals. Again, sounds like, so you've got probably 10 months or so to get things kind of going here, right? Because it'll be next May when the league really gets underway and they're playing games there?
Yep. We have an event next Thursday for kind of sponsors and potential kind of partners as we go along, and then we hit the ground running. And finalize the front office, finalize the coaching staff, and then, obviously put a roster together.
The fun thing about this, too, if I'm thinking about it, and I could be wrong in my dates because, Mike, I've been a diehard hockey fan now for 18 months, but I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking when the Sabres are playing in the Stanley Cup, you might be in town where you can come out and watch a game with me, right?
Well, they can't be in the Stanley Cup if the Maple Leafs are in the Stanley Cup, but they can maybe the Eastern Conference Finals. We can meet together, but it's go Leafs go for me all day long. But I live in the Buffalo area, so you're right. If I had a second choice, I'm good with the Sabres.
I guess actually the odds of either one of them winning the Stanley Cup are probably probably equally unrealistic, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's very cool. I love the story of it in general, and. I've mentioned this before, Mike. There was a movie with Jimmy Fallon years ago where he's a diehard Red Sox fan, and it was a Fever Pitch, I think was the name of it. And there's a line in the movie where the kid says to Jimmy Fallon, he's coaching a kid, and the kid says, you love the Red Sox, but when's the last time the Red Sox loved you back? And I'm not saying Indianapolis hasn't loved Mike Vanderjagt back. You were beloved here as a player for the majority of the time you were here. But I truly did get the impression, Mike, that you had a love for this town. And I had the impression you had a love for that franchise. And I got the feeling that just the way it ended, that you were hurt by it, truthfully. And that always was something that you wanted the opportunity to mend, and now the opportunity is here, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I have a tattoo horseshoe on my arm. I have, my golf simulator room that I built has a Colts wall dedicated to everything Indianapolis Colts. You retire as the most accurate kicker in Indianapolis history. You're the all-time leading scorer when I left Indianapolis. Obviously, there's a lot of good things that happened while I was here and there. My son grew up in Indy for the most part. So, I will be a Colt forever, and you either embrace it or you fight it. So I've embraced it. I think the town will embrace me back again, and it'll all be roses and tulips until we start losing. So we just got to make sure we win football games, and we just create a good atmosphere for fans that maybe are looking for something to do in May and June. And I expect to win, and I expect to represent the city of Indianapolis, obviously, the best way I can.
I know, Mike. In conclusion, what. For yourself and your career and the statistics you had, Peyton Manning pointed out, I think we talked to you about it last time I talked to you about the kicks in Denver. I mean, some of the kicks you made here, pretty legendary. And then Adam Vinatieri goes into the Hall of Fame as a kicker for both the Patriots and Colts, obviously. But I know what the Hall of Fame would mean to you. Was it bittersweet to see him go in, or as a kicker, do you have that fraternal feeling of, hey, good for a kicker to get in?
That's a good question. I don't have any hard feelings towards Adam. Adam was a free agent, signed in Indy, had a great career, made some massive kicks. But I'll put my resume for professional football up against anybody. When you go a perfect season and you set the NFL record for 42 and he beat it at 44, and you're the most accurate kicker in history, and I did all the things in the Canadian Football League as MVPs and 14 for 14 in the playoffs and 9 for 9 in the Grey Cup. I think I'm as worthy as anybody to get in the Hall of Fame. I've talked to Mike Chappell about it. Whether I get it or not, I guess is another thing. But, the fact that more kickers are going in, for the longest time there was only one, and I think there's 3 now. So, the door's open and it's not closed, and, if any Hall of Fame guys listening, I deserve to be there for sure.
Well, Mike, certainly in terms of that football resume, you add another chapter to it with this opportunity with the Indianapolis Capitals. I have an old school Capitals T-shirt. I'm going to break it out. I'm going to wear it. And we certainly look forward to seeing you and hearing more and having you back on as you guys announce more coaches. I'll bug you again.
No problem. Hit me up anytime.
Appreciate it. Mike Vanderjagt joining us here on the program again, May and June. Eddie, I was going to bring it up because you're right. I'm jogging my memory, but I didn't want to put him on the spot because I wouldn't expect him to remember it, what it was that he said when we had him on the first time as former Colt Friday.
Right. Like, if we can't remember, why do we think that he'll be able to remember? It's escaping me, and I can't even find it in the archives.
He made a reference or a joke of some sort about us, right?
Yes, in the former Colt Friday thing, yes.
Boy, that's gonna drive me nuts. Nonetheless, it does. Interesting when he talked about kicking, and to have him on as a kicker. I thought last night we talked about all the position battles for the Colts and just where some of them may be kind of in limbo. For example, linebacker. I don't know that anybody truly, really jumped out. Although, like I said, I thought Jalen Carlisle looked like, you could tell that, and they have been patient with him. He's had injury. To your point, I thought Bryce Betcher he definitely looked the part. Caden Curry looked very good on the defensive line. Again, you do keep it with a grain of salt based on who they're playing against, what the situation is, and et cetera. But I thought Betcher and Curry and Carlisle are three guys that showed themselves well. And then the kicker position. The backup quarterback spot last night, and we'll get more into this as we continue on over the show, but I thought that it was best case, worst case scenario for the Colts when it comes to Anthony Richardson. It was the best case scenario because he did show flashes of why he was drafted where he was and the hope and expectation and promise that he had early in his time here. Clearly, he can move the football with his legs. Clearly, he is a big guy that has a strong arm. But he doesn't have great touch. He doesn't have great anticipation. He doesn't have great feel at times. And fair or unfair, just or unjust, players are often scrutinized or analyzed based on how and where they were acquired. And Richardson would be looked at and thought of and scrutinized entirely differently if he had those results and that look last night and had been a former fifth rounder. If that's Jacob Eason, you go, okay. But he is typecast by who he was when they got him. It might have been best case scenario in regards to Richardson last night, in the fact that if he is not in the Colts' long-term plans, and I'm not saying that he's not, but I do feel like Shane Steichen is seemingly out on it. Not even seemingly. I think Shane Steichen's done with him. And when he had that fumble and you look over and Shane Steichen is just staring at the ground, pinching his sinuses, you're like, okay, he's completely out on this guy. Maybe the good news is that if Anthony Richardson is not in the long-term plan of the Colts, he showed enough last night that he would be in the long-term plan of somebody, or the short-term. Now, I don't think anybody's looking at him as a starter. But maybe there are teams that say, you know what, this is intriguing enough to us that we now will go ahead and give you a fifth rounder or whatever it may be. But because Vanderjagt was on, and we haven't mentioned it yet, the other thing that became interesting that seemed like a fait accompli until last night, I think what you saw last night wearing a Colts uniform were two guys that are both going to be starting kickers on Sunday in 2 months. Just not for the Colts. One of them will be. But I think Spencer Schrader, yes, he might have had an inconsistent camp to this point. But Spencer Schrader hitting that 61-yarder with like 5 to spare, and he looked good. Blake Grupe's had obviously a big-time lead over the course of camp, but it's a different animal. There's a difference, a total difference. And I'm not saying Grupe hasn't done this, okay? He has. But there is a difference between going out and shooting 50 free throws in your driveway and then getting called out at halftime of a Pacer game to shoot free throws and have to hit 8 of 10 for the Hoosier Lottery. It's two totally different things. And there's a difference between being at training camp off to the side and having 4 people with a Twitter account and 2 assistant coaches track what kicks you're hitting and then send it out, and getting in a situation like that in a packed stadium under lights with another defense coming at you and et cetera, and you hit that. I don't know which, and I kind of feel like I think Schrader may have the lead here. Only because look at when they signed Matt Gay. I think the Colts do prioritize strength of leg over intermediate accuracy of leg. And I think Schrader gives you more range.
Blake Grupe made a 60-yard
shortened
field goal last year at Seattle.
Okay. But I'm saying, again, but what I'm saying is Schrader, if we wrote it off because he wasn't hitting the intermediary kicks in camp, he then goes out and hits that last night, and I think that then you go, okay, wait a minute. And yes, Grupe was in those games. He hit 2 of them, didn't he, in Seattle? Or the 60-yarder was the winner, right?
No, they didn't win. They lost to Seattle 16-13.
That's right. That's right.
I think it tied.
Seattle hit the big one at the end.
Yes,
that's right.
they tied it at 13, yeah.
But I think what I'm saying is I think Schrader shows, and Grupe, that kick was big, but you get a recency also. I mean, in other words, if you wrote it off and said this competition's over, I think last night it's like, no, whoa, wait a minute, is it? But I think both those guys, Eddie, it's kind of a moot point because I think whichever one does not make this roster, I think is going to be signed immediately somewhere else and be a starting kicker.
100%.
And as J&V mentioned last night, maybe it's New England. Who knows, right? But the kicking, they do look like if there's an area where you say, okay, they're in pretty good shape, it's kicker, right? But the problem with the NFL is if the area where you're in the best shape is kicker, then you probably got some work to do. Fever in action tonight taking on Dallas, and the Pacers' schedule was released yesterday. Nothing. All I know about the Pacers' schedule release, we discussed it earlier, but
lots of Segababas.
The one guy, well, here's the thing. If they have Segababas, it means that they also have Fricababas, right?
Excuse me?
That's the front game of a back-to-back?
No.
Frogababas.
No.
Better way to say Frogababas. Why not?
See, now you're just trying to be cool.
I'm not trying to be cool.
Yeah,
I'm showing you how absurd that sounds, right?
No. I think you just find the Segababa absolutely dope, and so you're
nobody says it.
So you're just trying to make up whatever it was, kind of like you were trying to make up the whole QR thing, just didn't take off like Segababa.
Okay. Now I realize that you're trying to replicate your idol Derek Schultz here, right?
Not my idol. Not my idol. We're just in lockstep with each other, just trying to make life hard on you.
Well, kudos. Job well done in that regard. You guys are Spencer Schrader and Blake Grupe. If I had to find people that are of the annoyance level, one hits a 61-yarder and the other hits a 60. Congrats.
No, we're like Shane Steichen and Daniel Jones.
Okay. You're on the same page, and I'm Anthony Richardson, or wondering what the hell happened.
Yeah.
Woke up in a great mood. I don't know what the heck happened.
Exactly.
Okay. But either way, the Pacers schedule, the one thing that jumped out at me was whoever that guy was that said that they were going to be playing on Christmas Day against the Knicks didn't have it right. And did you see that Stephen Holder got upset last night on Twitter with a friend of the station?
No comment, Jake. No comment.
Evan Sideri seems to upset. I like him. He's a nice guy.
No comment.
He seems to irk a lot of people.
No comment.
It is, by the way, with all of that cynicism, sarcasm, and petulant stuff that we just mentioned, it is a Friday. It is the bottom of the show. That means it is time for the Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. Story that I've told you about before, at least in the past, in terms of a group that I find inspiring. But they've done Indy proud. I'll let you know about that, and we will let you know how to make sure that you are on top of your cardiovascular health. And another message I received from a listener about exactly that, all next.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You know, I realize, and I totally understand, respect, appreciate all of that, how I've thought a lot about this. You know, you hear people tell different stories, and they say, I just want you to listen because you don't know when it can happen to you. And you think like, yeah, okay, I get it. And probably the same somewhat is true for me to an extent. I always knew just from a genetic standpoint that the heart thing was something that was going to eventually reach out and grab me, and it did, right? And yet, as I have mentioned many times before, there is a survivor guilt, that comes with surviving like a massive heart attack, where, and I'll never forget that feeling of knowing, the number of people that were lost, maybe even like during the time that I was in the hospital when that happened to me. And you question, you really do question, like, well, my life is not any more valuable than any other person's to the people of their life. And well, why am I the one, like, why did I get this fortunate and somebody else did not? It absolutely goes through your mind. And I don't know that I'll ever know that answer, but I did know that everything changed for me in terms of that thought process of when you say, and you hear someone say, like, you don't think it'll ever happen to you. And then I realized, I'm like, okay, but now I've gone from being the person that's like, yeah, it probably won't, even though I have a family history. So maybe I was a little more in tune, but to being the one that now is saying that. And so it is with a level of satisfaction is the wrong word, because I would never be satisfied to know that somebody went through a tough time. But purpose is probably a better word. And when people reach out to me to tell me of, the impact it had that they got a heart scan, honestly. Like, for example, hey, Jake, I wanted to let you know that my wife and I both agreed to get a heart scan after hearing you advertise it and talk about it. And while everything was okay from the heart standpoint, that scan is what helped us recognize that my wife had a cancer in which she was able to get the proper treatment early because it was discovered when we did the heart scan. Now, I don't know if the heart scan, I don't know that means necessarily that there was cancer in her heart. I don't mean that. I think it was more so that in talking to the doctors while there, oh, and by the way, I've noticed that I'm feeling this, and then they did additional tests. So don't misunderstand. But my point being, I literally got that this week. And it is so easy to do. A $49 heart scan at Franciscan Health. FranciscanHealth.org/screening bundles is the website for it. Very easy to do. I always say you can always text me at 317-523-9288. That's 317-523-9288. And I will get you the information as well with Franciscan. Very easy, non-invasive, takes under an hour to get a heart scan. And you get a heart health risk assessment with it that then kind of gives you the printout, the roadmap, if you will, of your heart health, making sure that you're on the right journey and that you're heading in the right direction for it. So it is so important. Franciscan Health, #1 in Indiana for cardiovascular care, for interventional coronary care, all from health grades, from care checks. #1 in Indiana is Franciscan Health. And each Friday, I tell you a different story about somebody in Indiana that is going maybe above and beyond or defying the odds or overcoming an obstacle for success when it comes to the world of sport. We've talked about, a young boy that was almost nonverbal that becomes his high school mascot and develops a new personality from that. We've talked about Paralympians. We've talked about athletes from the area that sports wasn't in the mix for them, but they found different ways to be involved. And that includes, and I've mentioned this group before, but I want to give them a special tip of the cap. A year ago, I gave you updates on them, but I'd like to say congratulations to Justin Holland and Zach Bueller. Gerald Bueller? Gerald Dykes, and as well Justin Holland. They were honored and named from the Indiana standpoint, first team all defense, and then in Justin's case, both first team all defense and first team all offense for the team that you've heard us talking about. The Indy Thunder, which is Indianapolis's representative in the World Series of Beep Ball, which is a fascinating sport. It is for the visually impaired. And I remember the first time that I was aware of beep ball, my buddy Steve that was playing with the team, Darnell, who calls the show and talks a lot about it, but going out and watching it, and one of the individuals on the Indy Thunder team, this was almost 20 years ago, the first time I was introduced to it, I remember was a guy who had played baseball in high school and was a pretty good player in the Gary area, and then lost his vision after being shot accidentally from a stray bullet in Gary. And he thought his playing days of athletics were over with, but he found out about beep ball. And if you are not familiar with it, it is a fascinating sport. It is basically baseball. The softball itself, so it's more softball than baseball because it's a bigger ball, but it is a beeping device. The pitcher is your teammate who underhands to you by telling you and saying, okay, here we go, 3, 2, 1. But everybody playing is visually impaired, and you must also wear a shade over your eyes to make sure that everyone's impairment is, in fact, 100%. And you have to hit the ball. As soon as you hit it, there are 2 bases, first and third, as we know it in our diamond setup. And the immediate contact with the ball then triggers, from somebody who sits with a button, one of the 2 bases to begin chirping an alarming sound. You don't know whether it's going to be the one at first or the one at third. But as soon as you make contact, you've got to run to that base. You've got to run to that base and make contact with the base before the defender is able to find and retrieve the ball. All of this based on sound. You get to the base first, it's a run. The defender gets it first, it's an out. 9 innings, standard fare. And it allows for people that have that, and we would call it disability, but it's not. You can't say disability without ability. And if you've ever tried to run while wearing a sleep shade or let alone hit a softball while one, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But the Indy Thunder just went, and for the 7th time in 10 years now, and I remember the first time they broke through and won it, but for the 2nd time in team history, they've gone back-to-back, and for the 7th time in 10 years now, of all the cities in the United States, and Indianapolis, or the state of Indiana, rather, has 2 teams. But Chicago has a team, and Kansas City has a team, and Philadelphia has a team. Orlando has a team. And they get together, and they play in the World Series, and the Indy Thunder, for the 2nd straight year, have won the World Series Beep Ball Championship. And the thing that I love about it is that these are folks playing that game. It doesn't get a lot of recognition. It doesn't get coverage. It doesn't get the newspaper coming out or, websites covering it. But they do it because it's a group of people that at some point it would have been easy for them to say, why me or why should I? But instead, they simply said, you know what, I'm going to. And they work together as a team. They practice all the time at Broad Ripple Park, and then they go out on a stage like that, and they win a title for the people of Indiana, and in this case, Indianapolis, with the Indy Thunder. So congratulations to them on yet another job well done in representing everybody here in this city that maybe takes for granted that we're able to see and participate in sports per normal as we always have. As for the Pacers themselves, and don't forget, folks, again, Franciscan Health, franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles, just $49 for the heart scan. As for the Pacers, and we still don't know where it is that they will be in terms of where we will be able to watch them. Pardon that awkward transition of that form, but we don't know from the television standpoint where their games are going to be aired. But we do know what those games are going to be and where their schedule may be challenging. Dustin Dopirak is the beat writer for the Indiana Pacers from the Indianapolis Star, joins us to break it all down next.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
What's my question every time it plays?
What part of Fast Times at Ridgemont High is this song?
Yes. First day of school, right?
Yes.
We Got the Beat is the opening scene of the movie. Fast Times, which was released on This Week in 1982, right?
Yesterday, yeah.
I just remember being at a Cub Scout meeting and Mrs. Curran saying to my mom, we went to go see Fast Times at Ridgemont High, that new movie last night, and it's complete garbage. and I was like 10. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then, when I first saw it when I was like 17 or whatever, I think it's the greatest movie ever made. It was an Oscar snub, right? Did you get a hold of Dustin, did you say?
So I reached out this morning, and he didn't reply. Something tells me he may have been up late trying. I wonder if Dustin was up late last night, Jake, because he was going game by game predicting win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. And so he had to make a record prediction for the Pacers. So he was up late watching film or whatever.
Speaking of being up late doing that.
So then he texts me and goes, hey, sorry I missed your text. I'm good anytime. So I text him back. No reply. Called him. No reply.
He didn't answer when you called?
No.
Do you think he's got you blocked?
No, I don't think so. We're buds.
Okay. I came up with a game last night.
Oh, heavens.
Okay? Now when I proposed this game, and I'm gonna say this on the air. Okay? I'm going to say this on the air, and you are literally, I have a new wrinkle to the game we played the other day, Eddie, and this kept me up until literally, I was well past 3:48 last night.
Oh, the sports teams that start with the letter of the alphabet, but you can't say the same league twice?
This is an incredible caveat.
Okay.
It's a little convoluted, but follow me. When I say this, folks at home, this is a game you can play at home. And when I say it, people are going to say, and then they're going to go, you know what, that is, it's going to be a brain teaser. It's not going to keep you awake. It's like that Wordle, that people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here's the rule. You ready?
Uh-huh.
Of the four major sports, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB.
Okay.
Okay? You got to start with the letter A.
All right.
You got to go to the letter Z.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think of a team name, and by name I mean Angels, Avalanche. You get where I'm going, right? For every letter of the alphabet, just one team.
Okay.
But every four letters has to represent one team in each sport. So you cannot repeat a sport twice in a four-letter set. So A, B, C, and D have to each have one team. E, F, G, H each has to have one team.
This is way too convoluted.
I, J, K each has to have one team.
Yeah, I know you're just kidding, Jake. Yeah, this is way too convoluted.
The fun thing about it is you think you're cruising along, but the other rule is you cannot use the same league twice. I'm sorry, you can't use the same league back to back. So you might be cruising, you're like, this is easy as can be. And then you get to a letter and you're like, oh, wait a minute. The letter that I'm following that with is the same league as the one I just used. So I've got to change that one, and then you've got to go back, and then it has like the reverse going to the left domino effect. And you just keep resetting.
Yeah, you've lost me.
It's not hard.
Yes, it is. You've lost me.
It's not hard.
You've lost me.
It's not hard.
Yeah, you lost me.
You go A to Z. Now, hold on. A to Z with a pro team corresponding with that letter.
This is very...
but every set of four has to have each league.
Yeah,
you have to use each league once per four.
Yeah, you're losing me.
Are you a moron? That's not that hard to follow.
Yeah, it is. You're losing me.
99% of the audience knows what I'm saying.
0%. My only friend Alec, I'm so lost right now. What is he saying?
No, he's not.
I'm so lost. Literally his words.
Have Alec call in right now. Explain it to him. It's not that hard. You have to name a pro team for each letter of the alphabet.
Yeah. You can't repeat.
But every of the 4 leagues, okay, it has to be, you cannot use a league twice until you've gone through the other leagues. And you can't use them back to back. Easiest way to say it. It will cause you to have to reset all the time. And that's the fun of it.
Pacers officially just waived Ethan Thompson. Jake, that was reported yesterday. Now they're just making that move official. Did you happen to see Fernando Mendoza performance last night at all with the Raiders in his preseason debut?
Jake, I have no idea what you're saying.
Bingo.
This is
See?
not, no, hold on.
I'm telling you.
Hold on. I'm going to explain it again. Okay? A through Z. Eddie, give me a team in pro sports off the top of your head that starts with the letter A.
Angels.
Okay? Angels. Give me a team that starts with the letter B.
Blue Jays.
You cannot use the same sport.
Oh, sorry. You
back
just
to
told
back.
me to give you a name. You didn't say anything.
You cannot.
Okay.
But,
Broncos.
Broncos, okay? So you now have used MLB. You've used NFL. Give me a team with the letter C.
The Canadians.
Okay? So now you are forced to use an NBA team that begins with the letter D.
Okay.
Do you have one?
Not immediately.
Okay, so you've got to reset then. You've got to go back and go, well, that didn't work because I have to use each of the 4 leagues. Then once you do it again, E, F, G, and H. But whatever team you use in D, you cannot use that same league to start with at E. So you're just doing groups of 4.
Yeah, see, we just wasted too much time trying to explain that. It's still confusing to me.
How is that confusing? I'm telling you right now, people are going to go, that's actually, and yes, there are a couple of letters I believe that there are no teams, so you just skip over those. But it causes your brain to constantly move. Maybe that is why I don't sleep. Maybe we've come up with the answer here.
Yeah.
Ethan Thompson, by the way, did sign a contract overseas, thus it was an automatic. Which happened first? Did the Pacers tell him he was going to be waived and then he signed, then they announced his waiving, or did he sign and they say, well, obviously he saw the handwriting on the wall and then they waived him? Chicken and egg. Either way, this obviously means that Braden Smith is going to be given that 2-way contract that he was told when they drafted him in the second round. Last night there was a lot to unpack, and we'll do exactly that. And we'll try to catch up with Dustin as well, but Kevin Bowen going to join us. Kyle Neddenrip also to talk about what's happening in high school football. We'll do it all 12 o'clock hour here on a Friday. Quarry & Company on the Fan. Hey there, Jake Quarry for Chicago's Pizza. Right now, the lunch buffet underway, and it's the weekend, which means perfect time. Perfect time for pizza night with the family. How about the family meal deal? 2 medium, 1-topping pizzas, and a fresh order of breadsticks for just $25 from Chicago's Pizza. But the lunch buffet, running now until 1:30. Think about this. Whether you are craving a traditional pizza, a deep dish pizza, maybe you're thinking, I want to go lighter today. A salad bar right there on crisp ice, all of the fixins, all the dressings you want right there at Chicago's Pizza. You get the option of both, and the dessert pizza, and the fresh rolled breadsticks, and a soft drink, and tax thrown in, all for a price better than what you're going to pay across the street. Chicago's Pizza has a story in every slice, and that story is simple. It is commitment towards great pizza. It is fresh, hand-rolled breadsticks. It is fresh, handmade dough each and every day in a location that cares about community and cares about pizza. A story in every slice at Chicago's Pizza. This weekend, family meal deal, perfect. And, of course, every day, the lunch buffet. ChicagosPizza.com. Last night in Foxborough, the Colts and the Patriots. A lot to learn and maybe still some questions to be answered from that game last night. I'm going to get into all of it here in just a second. Eddie, best way to explain this. You ready? You said Angels, so MLB off the board. You said Broncos, NFL off the board. You said Canadians, and then you got stuck at D because you had already. So here's the thing. You switch Canadians to Clippers. Now you got NBA off the board. Then for D, you go with Ducks. Then you go NHL. Now, you got to reset starting with the letter E. You got to do in any form E, F, G, and H, but your E cannot be an NHL team because you had an NHL immediately preceding it. The easiest way to say it. Last night in the Colts game against the Patriots, and good afternoon to you on a Friday, the NFL made a very smart decision a couple of years ago where they said, we are no longer going to have overtime in preseason games. If it's a tie, it's a tie. There you go. And the reality is that a preseason game in its own right feels a little bit like you're going through the motions. It feels like football, and it doesn't take very long before your interest just kind of wanes away because you're like, yeah, I'm watching a bunch of guys. I don't know who they are. And the old saying in sport about a tie is that it's like kissing your sister, which is a really weird saying to me because what that is supposed to mean is that it's like bittersweet. I have no idea what part of sweet would be about kissing your sister, but the narrative being, hey, you're somewhat happy because you didn't lose, but you're somewhat sad because you didn't win. And I think there was an element of that for the Colts last night beyond the scoreboard. And let's begin with the biggest part of that. Last night, Anthony Richardson showed why he's Anthony Richardson. And the good side of it, hey, we didn't lose, is that Anthony Richardson showed that he has offensive intangibles which are pretty impressive. He can move with his legs. He's strong. He has a strong arm and at times can zip the ball where it needs to be on, say, a crossing pattern. But just when you get enticed by it, just when you get excited by it, just when you start to think the light finally turned on, then he rolls out and fumbles. Or he throws one in the dirt, which he did that at the start, and then to his credit, he warmed up to the point where statistically I think he was pretty good, and he looked pretty comfortable. But just when you get comfortable in watching him is when all of a sudden something else changes. And another thing that happened that I don't know that many people noticed, I'm curious if anybody else noticed it, but at one point he had a rollout. He was coming towards the bottom of your television screen, so he was rolling to his left, and he tried to dive. I can't remember if it was for a first down or if it was down towards the goal line, but he landed in the way that he dove. He landed awkwardly. The weight of his body went down on his left foot, and it kind of rolled his ankle, and you could see him kind of like wince for a second. And I thought, here we go. Here we go. I don't think Anthony Richardson's made of glass. That's an unfair accusation to say about him. I think he plays a style that lends itself to putting yourself in position to be injured.
Anytime you hear glass, do you think of Die Hard? Glass?
No, I think of Glass Joe
glass?
I think of Glass Joe from Punch-Out.
Oh, okay.
Body blow. Which became Little Mac in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, which is the best thing. Dun, 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 dun. But Richardson last night showed you the full package. And by the full package, I mean the good and the bad of why it has been frustrating to wait for this to take off. But there was a play when he had the fumble. There was a moment where the camera pans over and there's Shane Steichen. And Shane Steichen, not for a second, not for 2 seconds, for a frozen frame in time, Shane Steichen is sitting with his arms crossed, his pointer finger and his thumb massaging the bridge of his nose and his sinuses. And he looks like a coach that is deep in contemplation as to exactly his fate. And I think the thing right there that you saw from Shane Steichen, if you were to be so Freudian, is that this was a guy, and it's very easy to say that Shane Steichen was actually expressing an exasperation of frustration of what exactly this is so par for the course. But it also, to an extent, was a foreshadowing, perhaps, of what Shane Steichen, in terms of the dichotomy of emotion and the challenge that he had throughout the course of that game, because Shane Steichen probably was thinking to himself at the point of that fumble, okay, if Anthony Richardson doesn't get this going, and if Riley Leonard shows a pulse, then this decision, again, is going to be made easily, that I made a long time ago, for the rest of the fan base in the NFL to see, and the fact that Riley Leonard is our backup quarterback. And then Anthony Richardson not only finds footing and looks pretty comfortable, but Riley Leonard finds neither. And in the NFL, I don't care whether you're Peyton Manning, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, how good a quarterback you are. The hardest thing for a quarterback to learn in the National Football League is the timing of gaps and windows. And by that I mean, you have to, as a quarterback, you have to be able to throw not to where the receiver is, but rather where the receiver has to be to get gap, because gaps don't exist in the NFL. And Peyton Manning, in his early career, was throwing to where receivers were, not where they needed to end up. And that's why he led the NFL in interceptions by a rookie quarterback in history. And Trevor Lawrence, who was a Peyton Manning-esque prospect, got off to a very slow start in Jacksonville, partially because of the Urban Meyer disaster, and partially because in college he was throwing to guys that always had a step and a half in front of their corners. The same thing with quarterbacks you see coming out of Alabama. They look elite at Alabama and they struggle in the NFL because they assume that window's always there. And such a big part of being quarterback in the National Football League is knowing not where the window in that moment is, but where it's about to materialize and throwing to that. That's a timing and a feel issue. And I didn't think last night Riley Leonard showed it. And he's still a young player, I realize. But if Riley Leonard had showed some semblance of a feel for that, then it allows Shane Steichen to do what I believe Shane Steichen wants to do, and that is not put Anthony Richardson on the field. But maybe Richardson showed just enough to create a quarterback controversy, not in who's your starter, who's your backup, or who's your backup, who's your three, but rather, is Richardson a quarterback that can be on the roster for Indianapolis? Or was he showing something that they're hoping means the phone is going to ring from elsewhere? I thought Caden Curry really showed some flash. I thought at the linebacker position, Bryce Betcher showed that he was comfortable. I thought Carlisle, who they've been very patient on, also showed a familiarity. And I thought the receiver position, nobody stood up and said, you know what, there's a job here. I'm going to reach out and grab it. But then again, it was hard to reach out and grab it sometimes because Richardson was throwing it too high for you, right? And Leonard wasn't throwing at all. But plenty to unpack. Kevin Bowen just walked back in, so we'll get his thoughts on it. I know that you had put out your video with your post-game synopsis very shortly after the game. But let's begin at the quarterback position, Kevin. Do you believe if and I do think that Anthony Richardson, once he settled in, looked pretty comfortable. And you can see the traits about him that are so incredibly intriguing. But are they intriguing to Shane Steichen, who I personally believe long ago made his decision? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on with Shane Steichen's opinion there on Anthony Richardson. I also think there's an element of that position is so precious. The depth chart is one that Hell, last year you had to literally pull a grandpa off the couch, and unfortunately, your starter has rich injury history. So, to me, as much as you might be done with him, or you might like other flavors of the month, you might need depth there. And I do think he brings a unique skill set to the table that if you're going to go play one game on a given week in early December, you saw it last night with his legs. His legs are such a weapon. And when he does throw the ball down the field, he's more comfortable. You can scheme up, I think, a win. So I just don't think giving him up right now, I can't hear any strong benefits for that. I don't view him as some massive distraction.
I would agree with that.
198th pick. Yeah.
But here's the thing, Kevin. If you were to okay, I'm sorry. When you're talking about that, you're talking about Leonard, right?
No. I'm talking
With
about giving up Richardson,
Right,
trading him, cutting him.
For a fifth rounder, what good does that do you? Right. I
Right.
get it.
But
But here's the thing, and I agree that there's no quarterback controversy there except for this. Let's just say hypothetically, and I don't deal in hypotheticals per se, but you have to. It wasn't raining when Noah built the ark, right? And so, if Daniel Jones, not just the injury history, but regression history, if you look at Daniel Jones in New York, he had moments where he was a very good quarterback, but that's not to say that there was consistency of that per se. That's why he's no longer a Giant. I thought last year, Daniel Jones, it goes without saying, was outstanding. But before he got injured, the injury overshadowed, in my opinion, the fact that he was starting to regress a little bit. Now, I'm not saying regress into like bad quarterback because he was playing at an extremely high level. But if Daniel Jones, if water finds its level a little bit there for the mean on him, and Richardson is showing and has a preseason that continues where he looks more and more comfortable and those legs are there, to your point, does there become some chatter of people of, hey, do they need to come up with some schemes or some situational moments of Richardson, and then does that become a narrative you don't need?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, I don't think Shane Steichen gives two you-know-whats about that, to be honest with you. I for that chatter to increase within the building, I almost think you'd have to have a 3-7 start, and Carly Gordon can everybody. Now, involving Anthony in some short yardage packages, like that maybe is a different conversation. And just to reiterate this, we wanted to mention this in the morning show a couple of times today. You're allowed to dress 3 quarterbacks in a game, but you have to clarify who is starting, who is the backup, and who's the third string.
Right.
And the third stringer can only come in the game if first and second get hurt. That's the new emergency quarterback rule. So you can't have Anthony in this third quarterback rule, but then you say 3rd and 2, boom, run in the game and run read option with Jonathan Taylor.
Right.
So you would have to identify him as your backup. Now, again, in a game setting, who would you want as your backup? Would you want Anthony or would you want Riley? You know, I think with Anthony, there is probably a little bit more volatility. I think at times we try to slot Riley into like this certain quarterback and Anthony into this certain quarterback. I think they're a lot more similar than people actually think. If people watch Notre Dame, you know, when he was there, they were a run football team.
Right.
Riley Leonard was not doing a whole lot with his right arm. And that's kind of the knock on Anthony as well there. So, you know, we debate this so much, but what you hit on right there at the start is probably something that we have to remind ourselves quite often, is that I just don't think Shane Steichen sleeps super easy at night imagining Anthony Richardson as his starting quarterback.
Kevin, I actually think the imagery of Shane Steichen sitting there doing this, you know, squeezing his nose, and you saw it after the fumble. Privately, I know this sounds crazy because I want to be very clear here. There is no reason nor indication that anybody in the Colts organization dislikes Anthony Richardson as a person. I've never heard that. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is not a guy that was going in and yelling at people and starting fights. None of that. But that image of Shane Steichen looking frustrated after the fumble, there's part of me that doesn't wonder if Shane Steichen also doesn't have that same image in a private setting when contemplating, am I really going to have to ride this out now? And is Riley Leonard not going to seize control here of what I need him to do?
Sure. I mean, honestly, we probably had the conversation 365 days ago, that preseason opener against Baltimore, the blindside blitzer hits Richardson. He injures his pinky. He gets knocked out of the game. And there was the debate, kind of the immediate aftermath of whose fault was it? I think Jalen Travis, a rookie, was playing right tackle. It was, should the rookie have slid out there, or did Anthony miss something?
Recognized it, right?
And Anthony should have recognized that. Now, as much as Shane can do the wincing and do all of that, I also think he's got to live in a 2026 bubble that says, what if Daniel Jones misses 3 games?
Right. Well, it's donut tire,
and
right?
Yes, you use this analogy a lot. And the thing about Richardson is he's a spicy donut tire, if that even makes sense. I mean, he's a really attractive sort of 2 or 3 game sample size. You'd have some defensive coordinators that are like, bleep, we got to get ready for that dual threat quarterback. And I get that he might miss Will Mallory in the flat, but he also on 3rd and 13 can take off for 15. And unless we knock the ball out of his hands, it's a first down. Or he can chuck it to Alec Pierce 50 yards down the field. And last night you saw it. He's a better thrower of the football the further down the field he throws it. So, there is that of, you lost 7 straight games last season to end the year. You lost, what was it, 5 without Daniel Jones, 4 without Daniel Jones. If Riley Leonard starts if Anthony Richardson starts one of those final 4 games last year, or if he starts all 4, if Richardson starts all 4, Rivers started 3, Leonard started 1, there's no way you lose all 4. I firmly believe that. I think he provides that flash, and I think Steichen can live in 2 bubbles. One, I don't want him for 17 games. He's not sustainable over the course of a season. He doesn't run the offense that I want to run. But I also have to live with the ingredients that are in my kitchen.
Kevin,
and he provides something like that.
Here is, I'm going to say the knock on Shane Steichen to this point, okay? It is the job of a quarterback to understand and execute the offense that is being placed before him by a coach. And Anthony Richardson seemingly has not done that well. But what nobody seems to mention is that it's also the job of the head coach to be able to make the proper adjustments when necessary to assist said quarterback within those schemes. And the reality is, Shane Steichen is a brilliant offensive mind, apparently. But if he was a truly brilliant offensive mind, he would also be able to tweak or cater what it is that he needs to best take advantage of what Anthony Richardson does if the situation presents itself where that's where he's got to go.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of me, it's like, was that a 23-24 conversation? Daniel Jones walks into the building.
Understood.
Shane thinks there's a higher ceiling here with Jones.
Understood.
In my offense.
I can open up the rev limiter a little more here, right? Yes.
Because there was always a thought to me with Richardson of okay, yes, you might not be able to hand him 500 pages of your offense, but again, can you live with the 100 pages, evaluate him in comfortable settings to him, playbook-wise, and then see if he can be more accurate. See if he can get into a little bit more of a rhythm, not feeling, overwhelmed, those sorts of things. And then also, we can't ignore either the health element to it of he just hasn't stayed healthy enough, flat out, to really get true, long, consistent evaluations. I mean, we're in a period of time right now. It's one of the healthiest stretches of his career.
Right.
And we're talking, a month? I mean, I guess going back to the spring a little bit. So, I think he gets August 30th. These are the 3 quarterbacks that you roll with. You can debate Leonard Richardson as the backup, but there's probably a 50-50 chance you're going to need all 3 at some point this season.
Can we totally and fairly assess the wide receiver position, given the fact, in particular, once Leonard came in, that they were not getting real consistent? Will Mallory, again, I mean, he played very, very well. He has become the tight end Drew Haddad, right? And I do think that given opportunity, he can contribute for them, but are you going to keep that many tight ends? I get that. I mean, he's obviously going to make the roster, but how much is he going to play? I don't know. But at receiver, somebody needs to step up. The opportunity could not be more golden. Do you think anybody separated themselves?
No, I don't. I found it interesting Ashton Dulin didn't play. Because to me, Jake, it's also a sign of who doesn't dress. Look at the guys Larry Overton interviewed. Those are key players.
Right.
And do they view Ashton Dulin in that light already as an offensive player? That's quite the compliment. Because I thought it was Dulin, Westbrook-Akine, Treadwell competing for 3, 4, 5. But if they look at Dulin and they say, he's a bubble wrap guy. He's a guy that we think is a key ingredient. Okay, you now you start to put him in at 3, and now you're saying Westbrook-Ikhine and Treadwell for 4 or 5.
I think Westbrook-Ikhine at this point feels like he's a half a step ahead of everybody else.
Yes, I would agree. Now, my question was he going to be ahead of Doolin? Again, I thought through probably the first 2 weeks of camp, Westbrook-Ikhine has made a few more plays, but Doolin offers a little bit more pop. I mean, a little bit more speed. So, again, we're still kind of getting that period of. Is there a veteran that comes in here in the next 7 to 10 days? This is when Xavier Howard showed up last year. I know that didn't go well, but he popped up 3rd week of August. First day out on the practice field, he was a starter. Is that going to be Keenan Allen here in 10 days?
By the way, Eddie, I just got a message again. I do think that, and I totally understand it. I absolutely understand. I'm being not even flippant here. Apparently, each time of the last 3 days that I have made like a Marconi award-winning point about either Anthony Richardson or I can't remember what it was yesterday, but I thought, about the fever. And Kevin, I actually took notes yesterday on a few things that I wanted to talk about. And I really nailed it. I mean, it was just right down Meridian Street. Nailed it. National Weather Service bumped us out.
I thought I heard that in the hallway when I was walking in here. And I was like, boy, he looks like he's in the rhythm. Like I was looking at you through the window, and it looked like I was a little rattled this morning, 9:45. I come back from filling up my water, final break, and I'm like, hey, you want to pop in? And you've got the Sharpie and the legal pad out.
I was writing down the break times. That's the level of there's my show right there.
You got pretty good handwriting.
I do have very good penmanship.
Yeah, I'm terrible.
Really?
Yeah. Like, is that manuscript or is that cursive?
Nobody uses cursive anymore. I like writing in cursive. It flows naturally.
Second grade, Cherry Tree Elementary for me.
Speaking of second grade, here's a game for you to do with your kids. And Eddie didn't understand the game. I'm going to explain it to you real quick before we let you go. Now, this is the kind of stuff that wins this show awards.
Good
okay?
grief.
You ready for this game?
Eddie, can you cue up one of those flash flood warning?
I couldn't sleep last night, and so I
Shocker.
came up.
Kevin, what do you think of the Pacers' schedule?
Shocker.
Came up with this game last night, Kevin. And Kevin, we're just going to see if Kevin can follow along.
15 back-to-backs. Can you believe it?
We're going to see if Kevin can follow along. Okay? Every letter of the alphabet. Now, we're taking out Q, X, and Z because they don't have what I don't believe that they qualify for this game. But if you had to go, you have 4 major pro sports, right? NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, right?
Okay.
It's a game to play with your kids. And your kids,
Also, there's no U.
Your kids will love it.
Okay.
Okay, 4. So that makes it easier. Okay?
22 letters.
22 letters.
Okay.
So you're going to write down the letters A through Z.
Yeah.
Okay? So here's how we do this. You've got to come up with a team amongst the 4 major sports for each letter. But in each quad, you have to use one of each league. So, for example, give me a team that starts with an A.
The A's, the Athletics.
Okay, the A's.
Nicknames, I assume we're going off of? Not cities?
Correct.
Okay.
The nickname. Give me a team that starts with a B.
The Bears.
Bears, okay. Give me a team that starts with a C.
The Cavaliers.
Cavaliers. Now, in your quadrant here, you have to use an NHL team because you have represented the other leagues.
The Ducks.
The Ducks. Excellent. Now you go to your next 4 letters. E, F, G, H. So E, but it cannot be an NHL team because you can't use the same league back to back. So E.
Gosh, were you really up at night thinking about this?
This is but here's the thing. You follow the game, right?
I do, and now I'm trying to think of an E. The
Eels.
See?
Kevin, this is what happens.
The
okay?
Eskimos.
This is what happens. I'm like poison ivy. You don't realize that when you're around it. You see it. You know it's there. You don't think that you're going to be thinking about it and aware of it 2 hours after the fact. And then you get home and you're like, oh, I forgot. I must have gotten closer to the poison ivy than I think. That's like this game. You hear it. You're aware of it. You tangibly understand it. And you think it's dumb and you wonder why I'm doing it. But the number of people tonight at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock that are going to be saying, I heard something interesting on the radio today. And they're going to try to do the game.
Eddie,
because you get to a point where if you can't use the same league back to back, you think you have it done. You think you have the puzzle done. And then you're like, wait a minute. And then you have to go back and reset, see, the reverse domino effect.
Eddie, I find myself this Friday segment just thinking to myself, usually the happy hour beer is like a 4:30 on Friday, and I always want to bump it up.
So here's
once
the
I
thing,
hang up.
Kev. I made the mistake of telling him I didn't get it. I should have just lied and said I got it, so he
Great
just would have
point.
stopped and just moved on.
It's a great game.
point.
It's no.
The
It's a great
sports name
point.
game.
What's the E nickname?
Eagles.
Ah,
See, Eddie's been thinking about it, right?
shoot.
Now, here's the thing. This is a perfect road trip game. You're in the car. You got four buddies. You're driving to California. You do it this way. It's perfect.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dyke didn't head to his bachelor party right now, his brother's bachelor party. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, he's probably listening to doing it in the car. Yeah.
See, you're thinking about it right now, and you're not going to stop thinking about it because you're like Eagles. Well, then, I mean, F, I could go with Flyers, but then I can't use an NHL team for G.
Yeah. As much
I
as
go
it
with
pains
Guardians, right? But now you got H. You can go Hornets. Okay, fine. Except
Hurricanes.
Hurricanes.
Carolina Hurricanes.
But didn't you already use Flyers? You can't. You already used the NHL in your pod.
I did not. You did.
Okay. Who'd you use for F then, Eddie?
F?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. You didn't ask me.
Well, think about it, smarty pants. You already used Flyers. You can't use Flyers because you use Hurricanes. That's my point. See, Kevin, this is the kind of give me the position, Kevin, that
How about 49ers? Does that count? Starts with an
it
F.
does. It does. See, you don't want to admit it. You don't want to admit it, but you're like, wait a minute. Now you're going, right?
This stinks. The fact that I have to walk out of here being like, that was a good Jake idea.
Sorry. He couldn't use the 49ers because he used Eagles on E.
See, Eddie? Exactly. Eddie's on top of the rules of the game now. See, you don't want to admit it. You don't want to admit it.
See, that was easy.
This is just like Why Not Indiana. It's going to sweep the country. The Query team name game. People love it. Kevin, give me a position last night that you thought actually the Colts looked better than what you expected.
Linebacker. And those are three guys competing for week one snaps. Bryce Betcher, the rookie out of Oregon, number 50. Austin Ajaki, 58. And then Jalen Carlisle, who you mentioned earlier, Jake. I thought all three of them. And again, they could be playing like Lamar Jackson roles week one against him. So I thought that position group was really good. I thought Jalen Tuimoloau I'd put in the bad category. Wanted a lot more from him. And then same with your corners. But I thought linebackers, especially the frontline guys, I thought flashed.
I thought this, one of the stories that will be fun to watch here as camp ends, and it is one that I think you're going to feel just fine about whichever way it ends. I think last night we saw two guys or not two guys, but throughout camp we have seen two guys kicking for the Colts that both are going to be starting kickers in the NFL.
Found it very interesting. Mike Vrabel mentioned specifically after the game, their kicker missed 3, and the Colts have 2 kickers that make kicks.
Right. J&V mentioned it last night. He's like, one of these guys is going to be kicking for the Patriots.
But, like, the fact that it caught the head coach's eye and he's mentioned it in the post-game press conference, like, that's good for the Colts.
Right.
So, yeah, the Colts have kickers.
Running back, Ulysses Bentley going to make the roster?
I told you earlier, I thought of you when he got in the open field.
Yes, that's right.
I don't think, I don't know.
I saw him doing that on the polo grounds. He always seemed to find the open lane.
I've already complimented you once in this segment. Lord knows I can't do it again.
All right, Kevin Bowen, in terms of your coverage, and I know you had mentioned it is now, are they afternoon or night practices this weekend? 4
practices left at Grand Park, that Drop Light Grand Park campus. 4 o'clock tomorrow. I assume it'll be a very light session. 4 o'clock Sunday. I assume that'll be a little bit more intense. Off Monday, off Tuesday. Atlanta Falcons Wednesday and Thursday. Those are both in the afternoon, and that's it.
Eddie, you were going to go with Islanders for I, but you can't because you said Hurricanes for H.
I didn't say anything.
You got to go with Hornets on that.
Didn't say anything.
Okay.
Gosh, Eddie, you and I should just, you want to meet, you want to go over here to, what's our pub?
Head over to the living room, guys.
Yeah, living room lounge.
All right, Kyle Neddenrip will join us on the other side. We'll get caught up on what's happening from the high school football standpoint, including an update on that story we told you about from Elwood a week ago. Kevin, appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend. It is Query & Company here in the Fan. Hey there, Jake Corey for Surfside. Look for the can with the sunset stripe. Surfside, the very best when it comes to basically sunshine in a can, and I mean smooth as can be. Iced tea with a splash of vodka, lemonade with a splash of vodka, or, of course, iced tea and lemonade with a splash of vodka in the same can. You can always do a mix and match with different flavors. The blueberry lemonade has been huge. Surfside, look for it wherever you buy your favorite adult beverages. Ask for the can with the sunset stripe. Surfside, please be 21 and please consume Surfside responsibly.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
25 minutes before the hour of 1 o'clock. Thanks again to Mike Vanderjagt, who joined us at 11 o'clock today. That will be available in podcast form, 1075thefan.com, the website. We would ask, of course, that you do your listening of the podcasts of this radio station when you're not listening to J&V coming up at 3 o'clock. We'll find out what he's got going on as part of the crossover. Kevin and James this morning had plenty of coverage in regards to the Colts and last night. And speaking of the Colts, I thought it was pretty cool. When Kyle Neddenriep joined us last week, we talked about, and I had on the head football coach at Elwood, and the Colts reached out to the football players at Elwood to offer them some tickets to games, and Elwood is trying to put together a football program. And I know that their coach, when we had him on, had talked about the fact that they were really close on the numbers of being able to get that done, make that a done deal, and putting together a team. But my understanding is then, I saw yesterday the latest from their head coach that, again, a couple of players dropped out or transferred or, whatever it may be. And so they are again in jeopardy. And I do think I understand it. Football is a physical game. We are more aware of the health standpoint of it. And I think that has become such a conversation within the public conscience that you're seeing more and more parents that are hesitant, that kind of thing, of getting their kids within the sport. Maybe it's other kids or other sports or the year-round aspect of sport, baseball notably, volleyball for that matter, even though, more boys are playing volleyball now, that it's detracting away from football. But joining us now on the Schwab Men's 2-1 hotline, and admittedly, when it comes to talking about some of these things, when it comes to high school athletics, I do get, Eddie, as you know, a little bit clueless, right?
Yeah, you do, for sure.
We'll try this one more time. Sometimes when it comes to talking about high school sports, we go to the Schwab Men's 2-1 guest line because I can become a little bit clueless.
Yeah, you can.
Do we not have the sounder there?
What sound are you talking about?
Okay, we'll try this one last time. Sometimes when it comes to talking about high school sports, we go to the guest line because I can become a little bit clueless.
And clueless, we bring on Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star.
There we go. Thank you. There's our intro for Kyle Neddenriep. Kyle, let's begin with the story in Elwood. It seemed like after you and I talked about it last week that then we thought Elwood was going to have a team put together. It looks like now they're back to trying to get as many kids as they can and combing the hallways for a roster, correct?
Yeah, I did. I haven't touched base with the athletic director there since I guess it's been about a week ago. But yeah, it looked like they've lost some of the kids who ended up coming out and saving them at first, and now those kids are, at least some of them have. It looks like kind of gone back to not playing and. Yeah, I mean, talking to them, they did, like, they sort of understood going into this year that it was going to be kind of a little bit of a touch and go with the numbers that are at the middle school and high school levels right now at Elwood. And, it's been a lot of struggles there, honestly, in about the last decade from a wins-loss perspective. So I think that's kind of taken its toll a little bit. There's other programs. I know I've been in touch with the Waldron coach. They're an 8-man team there. And there's a couple teams, Wabash and South Newton, who are planning on playing at least partially an 8-man schedule this year. I think Wabash case are going to play some 11-man and kind of a hybrid of some 8-man too. And then South Putnam, it sounds like they're going to be all in on 8-man. So there are some, there's some alternatives, and I know Elwood was considering that if they didn't have enough for an 11-man team. But because if you close it down completely and you don't play at all in a season, that really kind of, closes the door on trying to generate interest. So hopefully those programs can keep going and kind of turn it back in the right direction again from a numbers perspective.
Scrimmage is beginning tonight. Week 1 is next week. At this point, Kyle, within the last week even per se, is there a particular team that has jumped out at you either because, you thought like the Elwood situation, maybe something changed or maybe somebody now is not playing or a roster has changed or you looked at the schedule of somebody and you say, you know what, this could be a better year for this school than that. What has jumped out at you and what is your eye on for these scrimmages tonight?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's hopefully where I get a little bit of a better perspective, and I wish you could see more teams play. There are occasions. There used to be, more teams who do the jamboree style, or even a few years ago, Ben Davis Carmel and Westfield to play a 3-team sort of jamboree situation. That was fun to, see 3 good teams in one place, but, you can only see 2. I'm going to plan to go to Carmel and Zionsville tonight, get a look at those 2 teams and see what they look like. But, I think there's some teams out there that, you look at a team like Avon, I think maybe fits that category. They were made a jump to 6-5 last year. They were 3-7 the previous year, and they've got a lot of talent coming back, especially on the defensive side. And I think that's a team that, they did give Brownsburg some trouble in the regular season game. So we'll see. They play Warren Central tonight. That should be another interesting scrimmage. I'm pretty high on Warren Central this year. They have 14 starters back from a team that won a regional last year. So that'll be a good one. I'm hoping to watch some of that tomorrow online. But yeah, this will be some good matchups, and I think some you'll find out a little bit about teams now. These scrimmages tonight doesn't give you a full indication. You keep things pretty vanilla. The starters don't play a ton of time tonight, but at least it's a chance to go out and see one team play against another team and give you a little bit of a gauge on some players too, and just kind of see what they look like out there.
Kyle Neddenriep is my guest. He is on the Swab Men's 2-1 hotline from the Indianapolis Star. Kyle, one thing that kind of is ongoing, but we see it now, and I wanted to touch on this with you. There are certain schools that the enrollment itself, Whiteland is a good example. Whiteland as a school and as a community has had a huge, in a good way, you know what I mean, a huge increase of population because you have a lot of different people that are moving there for different jobs that are available, but it doesn't necessarily mean that is producing kids that are into athletics or that are playing football, basketball, whatever it may be. So the school is bigger, but it doesn't mean the athletic program is necessarily benefiting from that. Is there an example of a school that you can think of that we have seen in the last 5 years that the old guard Indianapolis resident may not realize it, but don't blink now because the school has become so big that their athletic accomplishment is coming, and it's coming quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question. Frank Central is a school that, they've had success in different sports. That's a school that keeps getting, bigger, and I think there's more room for growth there. Definitely, the school you mentioned there, Whiteland, there's a lot of area to build, then that's been a school, for a while now that above 2,000 pretty soon in student population. And, sure enough, they're, I think, 2,100, this year and pretty comfortably into that, Class 6A where they used to be, fairly far down in 5A,
Right.
So they have grown significantly. Zionsville's another one that, they popped in there in 6A football and, have always been, a 4A basketball program, but, they've jumped up quite a bit. We'll see if they can. The hardest thing, I think, in I think Whiteland, you find this out when you get Center Grove in your sectional. All of a sudden, it's like, it's pretty tough to win in 6A football, and Zionsville's, found that out too. Not that was unexpected, but I would say, I think Westfield is somebody we've seen that kind of fits your, kind of that mold of what you're talking about there, where they have in the last 5 to 7 or 8 years probably really taken a big time jump in what they used to do athletically. And we see it in football where it seems like almost every year they're in the 6A state finals. So, yeah, I mean, it's some of the schools I think that are on top right now. I mean, they're continuing to grow. The suburban schools are getting stronger, I think, and even with facilities and just the amount of talented athletes in these schools. So, it's interesting to me. Can the what used to dominate 6A was the township schools, and can they kind of re-grab their hold on things? And not that they've fallen off completely by any means, but it used to be in 6A football, you kind of counted on those. They would beat the suburban schools all the time. So that's kind of an interesting thing that's happened here in 6A in the last several years.
Kyle, last year it was the inaugural Coaches Confidential. You brought it back again this year. I'm fascinated on what the coaches said in this poll and this question, just because of the fact that, between last year and this year, they have personal brain activities. It's another year of the transfer portal. So it's becoming more and more like college athletics. How do coaches view, in general, if they could change or eliminate one thing about their job if they could?
Yeah, that was kind of a fun response to sift through, and it's interesting to me. And I don't try to read like who wrote what. I put them all in one thing, and then put it all together that way, and you don't even really know. Occasionally, I'll look and see, oh, that's kind of a funny answer, and look and see who it was. But I think and some of them said nothing. They wouldn't change a thing. They love it. And some say. I think the biggest maybe difference is like some say, hey, we need more stuff in the off season to do with our kids. And then some are way on the other side. Like, they're burning us out. We're working, 365 days a year where there's something to do all the time as a head coach. And I get that. And I think that's more, probably depending on how big your staff is, based on what your answer is to that. But, some of them were definitely, you can tell the parents have, kind of worn them down a little bit. There's, some said, I'd get rid of the entitlement from parents thinking, something about their son. And so there's some of that. There's some, I think thoughts that, the seeding is one. The open transfer rule, the first-time transfer rule that changed last year is definitely one that came quite a few times. And there's others that, are kind of specific to the travel sports. That was another one that came up several times, social media. And there's other ones that are a little bit more specific probably to the school that you're at, like for your kids and, trying to make sure they can get this practice and get to school. So, probably depends a little bit on the type of school that you coach at, what your socioeconomics are a little bit, but it is interesting to me just to kind of read how they're feeling, and the administrative stuff that kind of wears you down, the paperwork and stuff like that. But but some pretty thoughtful entries in there, I thought, this year.
Kyle Neddenriep is with the Indianapolis Star on the Schwab Men's 2-on-1 hotline. He will cover the scrimmages tonight, and then everything gets going in earnest next week for week number 1. Kyle, appreciate it as always. Enjoy the weekend, all right?
You bet. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Eddie.
Kyle Neddenriep joining us on the program. We come back, we will check in with what JMV is warming up for his program that begins, of course, at 3 o'clock as we cool things down. Speaking of cooling and warming up, it is that time of year. It won't be long before all of a sudden we get into that crossover period, right, where you're trying to figure out, and it's tricky knowing the temperature of your home based on the weather outside. Love Heating and Air is the best for all of that. Love-HVAC.com is their website. 317-353-2141 is the telephone number. An official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer is Love Heating and Air, and they have been in business in Central Indiana for over 100 years. That means that there is not a style of home that wouldn't be something they are used to treating. So whether it is humidity control or your furnace, air conditioner, Love Heating and Air is going to be there for you, and they're going to treat you like family. I know that first and foremost. I've known them my whole life. And as an official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer, they have the very best product, the very best prices, and 24-hour on-call maintenance. Over four generations, I should say, over 100 years in Central Indiana. That is Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com. We will find out what John's got cooking, and we'll do it next. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. You know, the blueberry lemonade has been a huge seller for Surfside, and it is fantastic because the flavoring in it from Surfside is so subtle, just like that little splash of vodka that is subtle, but you know it's there, and it is so smooth because no carbonation. It is oh so easy to drink. Surfside in a variety of flavors, iced tea with vodka, lemonade with a splash of vodka, available wherever you buy your favorite adult beverages, just 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar. Surfside, look for it wherever you buy your favorite beverages. You can buy a mix and match with flavoring as well. Please be 21 and please consume Surfside responsibly.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
JMV will be on the air at 3 o'clock today. Of course, had the abbreviated show yesterday, but that was not to say that the day was abbreviated. Colts in action last night and this weekend.
Yeah.
John, you'll be putting up some shots at the State Fair, right?
Hey, look, there's Eddie. Oh, now he's moving the camera right at me. Hi, everybody. How are you?
Which camera are you looking at? Is it the middle or
This
the
one
far
right
left?
here. It's the one on the end, closest to you.
Okay.
I think, right? Am I looking at it
Yeah,
right now?
they're
Yeah,
crossed.
that's right.
Yeah.
Do I look? Kind of look like Jefferson trying to size up the offensive line because he's looking two different ways.
That's right. Jefferson, who had them up 42-0 at the half. They just called the game, right?
This ain't we're done here.
Game
He's
was over.
killing too many people. So how are things going today?
Not bad.
Good.
Actually, we had a busy day today. I thought, you know, you get so caught up in game one of the preseason, and you're like, do we really know anything about this? But I do think that, John, I think Riley Leonard did not step up and say, you know what, I'm going to show that this should be my job. And I don't know that any receiver did either, although you have to also take it with some grain of salt, right?
Yeah. Don't you just go 3 quarterbacks? That's it.
I mean, it kind of feels
Richardson
that way.
can be the backup, and Leonard can be the third string, and because you're probably going to need them all anyway. Who cares?
No,
Right.
I think it feels that way, right?
Yeah. There's so much that there's not a lot to really talk about right now because you're not going to get the true answers that matter until the guys get out there that actually matter. But I was happy for Caden Curry. Very much so. I don't care who he was playing against.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said earlier, you could put Warren Sapp out there, and he would make plays. But so Caden Curry, I mean, he just has a motor. You know what I mean? He was playing at a different speed and a different vision of gap than anybody else.
Yeah. And people are going to say, well, he's playing against insurance agents of the future and guys in different leagues. But he was just out there showing to the best of his ability, and that's his ability.
But he didn't look like an insurance agent.
No, he did not. He looked like he's a guy that should be a member of this team.
Who's on the big show?
Hey, anybody think that may compromise Luke Rhodes at all? Long snapping, if you wanted to keep Curry and Rhodes.
Because he can do it, right?
What do you think, Eddie? We got a long snapping battle? Because I guess
not.
he does it probably
not. He'd just be the emergency, right?
The emergency. Exactly. But hopefully he can continue that.
By the way, Eddie, tell me in my ear what time you said.
We're over.
Okay. Well, we got to get out for Rich
We got to
Eisen,
go.
John.
Hey, I am at the great Pivot Balcony Bar, and Debbie Antonelli, Pat Boylan, and the girl that also is on those broadcasts too. They're all going to be there.
Kelsey Casper.
Kelsey Casper, thank you, buddy. All going to be there with me.
All right, John will be there at 3 o'clock, and we will be back with you including recapping his free throw shooting at the State Fair. We will do all of it beginning at 10 o'clock on Monday. Thank you for listening to Query and Company.